engine short to medium range narrow body airliner with a capacity of 172 passengers, at least in one model. I don't know about this particular model, but we do know that 21 people were there and were on this plane, 19 passengers and 3 crew members.
And then something that I can point out is that the road that fire crews are going down seems to be under construction, so it's definitely not an easy task for these firefighters and fire crews that are arriving to the scene. As you can see here live, we have what it looks to be construction workers and people that are kind of plowing the road, clearing the road, backing their way out, trying to make as much space for these fire crews and also law enforcement who have arrived here at the scene. So right now it's all about making sure this area is cleared, because from Area 11 it looks to be a very high brush area. We do not know how easy it is for these firefighters to get into the actual wreckage to try to battle these flames. From where we're standing, there's little to light smoke. Area 11 probably has the best vantage point at this point. Off in the distance you could just see masses and masses of law enforcement officials here at the scene, making sure that the flames and everything is under control, but most importantly, everyone who was on board, those 21 people, are safe and they get the medical attention that they need.
Absolutely, and it looks like what it crashed over was basically a dirt road, and there are paved roads nearby, but that's just simply a dirt road that it crashed over.
And pretty incredible that they were able to contain this fire as quickly as they did, considering the jet fuel and the other flammable substances and materials that could be on board, because there's a bunch of trees there. Those trees could have caught fire. The brush could have caught fire. I mean, this could have been a much worse situation, and thankfully the folks on board were able to get out with their lives, really, and one minor injury. This is all pretty incredible. But we're watching, it looks like the flames are out. Again, as we've noted, there are hot spots usually, and firefighters are going to stay on scene until it is all said and done. But on the left now, in that smaller box, this is a look at the model of the airplane, an MD-80 aircraft, and it's quite a large plane. We're not talking about, when we hear about these smaller plane crashes at these smaller airports, we're talking about the small 2-seater Cessnas or the 6-seaters. This is a sizable aircraft, and you mentioned that it seats more than 100 people.
Up to 172 passengers, at least one model does. But again, it's a twin-engined, short to medium-range, narrow-body airliner is what it is.
And this plane is registered to an investment firm that's based in Spring. At least it comes back to an address in Spring. The aircraft was not available for public tracking, so we know that it left the airport. It was traveling north before it crashed, but per the owner-operator of the plane, we were not able to publicly track this.
And we've got a preliminary statement now from the FAA. A McDonnell Douglas MD-87. McDonnell Douglas MD-87 rolled through a fence and caught fire in a field while attempting to depart from Houston Executive Airport in Houston, Texas, shortly after 10 a.m. local time today. Preliminary information indicates that 21 people were aboard and that all of them evacuated safely. The Federal Aviation Administration and National Transportation Safety Board will investigate. The NTSB will be in charge of the investigation. So we have some new information there. First of all, according to the FAA, this was an MD-87.
Which seats up to 130 airline passengers.
Yes, still a very sizable plane. They say it rolled through a fence and caught fire in the field while trying to depart from this airport in the area of Brookshire and Katy. And it happened shortly after 10 o'clock today. And again, more confirmation that 21 people on board and all of them evacuated safely, which is miraculous, and we all should be thankful for that. But obviously the plane could not be saved. And again, the Federal Aviation Administration, National Transportation Safety Board, they're going to investigate as is common, and the NTSB will be in charge of the investigation. Obviously, as we know from covering so many plane crashes, these investigations, they can last for months, if not longer.
So that is new information that we're just getting in now, that Ron was just saying. This is a McDonnell Douglas MD-87 plane. You can have about 130 passengers on board this type of plane. And we now know that the plane during takeoff actually rolled through a fence, and that's when it caught fire in that field. So it looks like they were on the ground. They were able to get those folks out of there quickly. 21 people, one person with minor injuries. Pretty amazing when you're looking at these images now of what's left of the plane, and pretty incredible that firefighters were able to contain it and put those flames out. It looks like, within the hour, really, because this was reported just after 10 o'clock and we're approaching, 11:35 now. So this was a pretty miraculous scene when you look at the damage there.
And also, if you're looking what the FAA is saying,
yeah.
Can you even call this a plane crash? It was rolling through a fence and caught fire. I mean, obviously it's a mishap, but it wasn't exactly a crash. It didn't fall from the sky. It rolled through a fence and caught fire, according to this statement anyway.
All that white stuff there is the water, the foam mixing, all of the chemicals, the jet fuel, everything that's come off that plane. There's really nothing left of that plane except the tail.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, Cheetah, obviously the weather is helping out the firefighters today.
It is. I tell you, the weather conditions were perfect for flying today and really for putting out a fire. We're talking less than 5-mile-per-hour winds. In fact, I've been dialing our satellite picture back just to even see the cloud cover from this morning, and clouds broke so early. We have clear skies right over this area. So you can see in the small box on your screen, I'm going to zoom in to exactly where we're talking here. Now notice there's Katy, there's Brookshire, and then just north of 90. Now when you see the direction of the winds, that's indicating where winds are traveling. So these winds are traveling from the east to the west. So even looking at the smoke coming from what was the fire, now that they've put that out, what that smoke is going to do, it's going to travel, let's say, a little bit closer to places like Pattison or maybe potentially Clemens. I don't know if it'll get that far, just because when we have clear skies, that smoke is basically going to travel due north in the atmosphere. Because of the winds, it'll travel west, but it's going to break apart pretty quickly. We don't have anything trapping that. A lot of times when we have cloud cover, you see that smoke linger towards the surface for hours and hours. But when you have clear skies like this, these clouds broke so early, that smoke is going to be able to lift in the upper levels of the atmosphere. Now let me show you some of the winds so you can kind of see on a bigger perspective what we're dealing with across the area. So our winds shifted overnight and they're out of the east southeast. But really when we're talking about right over here towards Brookshire, Katy, remember this is right on the cusp between Harris and Waller County. In Waller County, these winds are primarily due out of the east. So this is traveling, taking that smoke from the east. But I mean, even Ron, Reka, look at these winds across the board. Anywhere across the area, less than 10 miles per hour, but specifically over this location, less than 5. So it's been great news for the firefighters. Ideal flying conditions at that. Visibilities were not a concern at all today. I would even say sometimes when smoke like this starts to move across the atmosphere, my immediate reaction is air quality. How is this going to impact the residents all around the area? At this particular time, I am not concerned about that. Just because we have clear skies, that smoke is going to be able to lift, and the natural mixing throughout the day is going to help mix some of that smoke out. Also, a lot of times when we have winds and some fire, you think, could it spark another fire? Because fires, and you talk about the winds, can create more activity. Not in this case. We're extremely saturated. We're great with our rainfall totals. This is not a concern really across the area at all. So great news for the firefighters in this location, but of course still a lot of questions as to what happened, what the reasons are, and all of that, because weather was not an issue today. I can tell you that.
Yeah, ideal flying conditions, but it looks like this plane never made it off the ground. It rolled through a fence at Houston Executive Airport, and that's when it ran into that field. It caught fire shortly after 10 o'clock today. But you're right, those conditions good for firefighters as they were trying to put out those massive flames that we saw, shortly after it caught fire.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a day. I mean, you hate to look at something like this and say count your blessings, but count your blessings, because this could have been a lot worse. With 18 passengers and 3 crew members, they all exited the plane safely. 1 minor injury, we understand. So no serious injuries, no fatalities, which is hard to believe when you look at that wreckage right there.
Yeah. Kudos to the crew. On planes, that they are, in charge of your safety and making sure all the passengers are safe. And there were 18 passengers on the plane, 3 crew members. It looks like everyone did the right thing and got off the plane safely.
Yeah, and you could get injured just trying to exit a plane if you don't do it properly.
And there was one minor injury, as we've been mentioning. We don't know how that person was injured, so very much a possibility. But so thankful that those folks are safe when you look at what's left of this plane.
And again, the word from officials is avoid this area. And we're talking about this area, FM 2855 north of Morton Road in the Katy, Brookshire area near the Houston Executive Airport. They want you to avoid that area. They've got a lot of emergency crews out there still trying to make sure these hot spots are out at this wreckage site and attending to anybody who may be the person who was with the minor injuries. They're having to deal with the passengers, maybe getting them to where they need to go. They have a lot of work to do there still, and they want you to avoid that area. Again, it's FM 2855 north of Morton Road near Houston Executive Airport.
Yeah, we saw David Gonzalez, a reporter on the ground in that area. He said, that picture to the left is where their camera is, and said that's typically a high traffic area for folks, so they're just kind of keeping cars moving, keeping folks moving as emergency crews tend to this situation here.
Yeah, they've set up booms in that little gully there near that dirt road to try to keep the flame retardants and whatever other chemicals and jet fuel from spreading down further down the road.
Yeah, they don't want that runoff getting into any water sources or anything like that. So keeping the scene as contained as possible, and it looks like they're doing a good job, and the weather really is on their side today.
And of course there's going to be that massive investigation into what happened, and then just pulling the wreckage from this area is going to be a massive job too, because this was not the smallest of planes, a twin-engine, short to medium-range, narrow-body airliner that could seat over 100 people. Yeah, it
seats up to 130 passengers. Obviously, not that many people on board. We have 18 passengers, 3 crew members.
So that's a sizable commuter plane there. So that's going to be a Herculean effort to get that wreckage removed and put into some hangar somewhere. Okay.
And again, we're hearing from the FAA now, and this is their preliminary statement about what has happened in Waller County with this plane crash. McDonnell Douglas MD-87 aircraft, it rolled through a fence and caught fire in a field while attempting to depart from Houston Executive Airport. Technically in Houston, Texas, apparently shortly after 10 a.m. local time. Now, preliminary information indicates that 21 people were on board, all of them evacuated safely. The Federal Aviation Administration and National Transportation Safety Board will be investigating. The NTSB is in charge of this investigation, and that is pretty typical when you see plane crashes like this. So again, if you're just joining us, all of this taking place just after 10 o'clock today, when this plane rolled through a fence out of Houston Executive Airport into this field and caught fire. There were 21 people on board. That's including 3 crew members, but they were all able to get off safely. They got out of that plane safely. There was one minor injury. We don't know exactly what the injury is, and we don't know how this person is doing, but when you look at what's left of this aircraft now, pretty incredible that it was just one minor injury in all of this. That aircraft burst into flames. Firefighters were on scene. They're still putting out hot spots. You can see them spraying. They've got water, they've got foam in situations like this, and of course, as Ron has been saying, laying out booms so they can kind of control the runoff from the jet fuel and all of the other potentially hazardous chemicals that are coming off of this scene here. But again, a pretty miraculous situation when you look at the size of this plane and how big those flames were, that no one was seriously hurt and there were no fatalities from this plane crash.
Truly amazing, truly amazing. Our reporter on the scene, David Gonzalez, they're keeping him a safe distance from the wreckage. But what can you tell us now, David?
Hey guys, I can tell you that fire crews continue to arrive as we speak. I could hear sirens right now coming in from the distance. Right now, the main priority from law enforcement that we keep talking to is just to keep traffic moving here on 2855 near Morton Road, and that's because they want to allow emergency crews the best and easiest access to this wreckage of this plane crash. Right now we are just east of the Houston Executive Airport, and that is where the plane rolled through a fence and crashed and caught fire. Luckily, the 18 passengers on board were able to get out, as well as 3 crew members. But here you see we have the Harris County Hazmat Response Team, as well as the Harris County Hazardous Materials Team arriving on the scene as we speak. And as we mentioned, the plane crash happened right after 10 o'clock, so it's been an hour and 45 minutes since this plane crash took place, and we still have fire crews arriving here to the scene. That shows the priority of these firefighters and law enforcement is to make sure that the wreckage, the flames, the fire is contained, but as well that everyone who was on board, those 21 people, are all okay. We are happy to report that those 21 people, no one received any serious injuries. I think we've said that at least one person received minor injuries, but when you look at this footage, when you look at these images of the plane crash, of the flames coming from that plane, you can just see how bad it is. But back out here live right now, traffic is moving here on 2855 and Morton Road. All the action is taking place behind us. We can't physically see that wreckage, but it's about a half mile away, and the priority of these firefighters is to make it in as close as possible and provide the services that they can, and that is containing the fire and as well keeping everyone safe. Yeah, and that's a tough job, as you point out. There's so many first responders out there trying to secure the scene, and they're urging desperately people avoid this area. Again, this is FM 2855 north of Morton Road. Thank you so much, David Gonzalez. We're also joined now by one of our investigative reporters from our investigative team. You're welcome.
KHOU 11 Investigates. Jeremy Rogowski, you've been making some calls and trying to get more information about what happened and perhaps the plane and what the process is now.
Yeah, Ron and Reka, one of the things we do is to check the air traffic control traffic before, during, and after any incident like this. And oftentimes you expect to hear a lot of chatter, particularly when a plane goes down, between the tower and the aircraft. In this case, as of yet, we haven't found that. There was no apparent mayday call, no distress call. Let me walk you through a brief timeline of what we've been able to ascertain. Again, this is air traffic control traffic from the Executive Airport Tower. About 9:58 a.m., 9:58 and 27 seconds to be exact, the tower clears Flight 987, or tail number 987, for departure. And there's some downtime there, and about 30 seconds later, the tower once again transmits to the aircraft saying, make sure you're above 1,200, meaning 1,200 feet. The tower indicates to the pilot that you may overfly a helicopter in the area. And about 15 seconds later, the pilot answers the tower saying, okay, that should be no problem. I'll keep a lookout for that. And then we don't hear anything for the next 3.5 minutes or so until the tower makes a blanket call to all aircraft saying, hold your position, I'm going to get a runway inspection. So again, 9:58, the aircraft that we've been covering now from Air 11 for the past hour or so gets cleared for departure. About 35-40 seconds after that, the tower says, make sure you're above 1,200, there's a helicopter in the area. The pilot responds saying that should be no problem, and I'll keep a lookout for that. And then it's radio silent, which is quite interesting. We don't hear a distress call. We don't hear your classic Mayday, Mayday, or anything of the like. And so, obviously, not a whole lot to go on from the radio tower traffic.
Can you tell us again who was talking about getting a check on the runway after this? You said something about.
So yeah, about 10:03 or so, 10:03 this morning, the tower at Executive Airport transmits to all aircraft saying, hold your position, I'm going to get a runway inspection. And then about 45 seconds later, he reiterates that message, that being the tower at Executive Airport, saying we need to get another runway inspection. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I think it's safe to assume that they don't know what they have their hands on. They don't know if there's debris on the runway. If a part of the plane fell off, while it was disembarking and on takeoff, so they held everybody. And then I will add one more thing. At 10:08 a.m., another call from the tower came out saying runways are suspended at this time. But again, 9:58 cleared for departure. About a minute or so later, pilot says that should be no problem. I'll keep a look at and stay above 1,200 feet, and then we don't hear anything else.
And the preliminary statement from the FAA says that the plane rolled through a fence and then caught fire.
And we don't know how far it went. I wonder if Air 11 can pull back on the shot a little bit, because yes, if it rolled through a fence, I wonder how far away it got from the airport before it came to ultimately.
Maybe it never left the ground.
Yeah.
Well, what we don't know is what we don't know.
Yeah, we
correct?
don't know.
Exactly. But in terms of a Mayday call, saying we're having trouble, we need to make emergency landing, that doesn't appear to happen from the air traffic control archives that we've been monitoring, which would corroborate that initial FAA statement.
Well, let's see if we can get some more answers now. We're trying to get Houston Fire Department Captain Ronald Krasleski. Captain, can you hear us? Hello, Captain? Captain Krasleski, Houston Fire Department, can you hear us? Hey, what can you tell us about what you know about what happened here?
Honestly, I'm just finding out about the incident. I know it was a MD-80 that had an incident on takeoff. I see that the fire department is doing a great job on fire suppression and providing an exit path for those who can self-evacuate. With a fire of this nature, they use a firefighting foam to quickly put the fire out, suppress the vapors, and then go in and do a search and rescue of the aircraft to make sure all of the passengers are off the aircraft.
Captain, this is Rekha Motoraj with KHOU. I'm wondering, how do firefighters approach a fire like this when you're dealing with jet fuel and other chemicals? What are some of the tools in their toolbox? What are they using to put out the flames, besides the water and foam?
Right, that is going to be the agent of choice. Water alone will not put a fire out of this nature, so they have to use a mixture of Class D, what we call Class D foam, to actually cool all of the metals around the fire so the fire doesn't reignite. It quickly puts the fire out. It smothers the vapor so they don't quickly reignite. So that's the only type of agent of this type of fire that would put that fire out.
If you're looking at the
They
images,
keep it from reigniting.
and that if you're looking at the images, of course, we're showing you images from Air 11, and right now Air 11 is showing images from where the runway is to where the plane is. So it's a couple hundred feet away, it appears. But the biggest thing is that this rolled into a field. There's a lot of trees around the plane, and of course that plane burst into flames. Pretty incredible that they were able to keep that fire under control. Are there, what are the specific techniques they have to use to make sure that this fire doesn't catch onto the trees and to the field?
Well, the pictures that I'm seeing right now on TV, the fire department did an excellent job of containing the actual fire to that site. I'm sitting there seeing that they kept it local to the area. Being off airport property, it looks like the fire department made a very quick response to the scene. I see they did supply lines to the aircraft, protected the exposures after they determined all passengers were off the plane. The images I'm seeing on TV right now, they did an excellent job.
Yeah, we're taking a wider view, and maybe we see the
skid marks,
the skid marks or the wheel marks of that plane. If FAA saying that apparently it came off the runway, hit a fence, and then caught fire.
Yeah, you definitely see the tire marks coming off the runway onto the field and then kind of through the trees. So it definitely, it's hard for us to really tell because we're far away, but that's a few hundred feet.
Yeah, and Captain, how long will the firefighters have to remain on the scene to make sure there's no more hot spots? Are they going to be there all day, or how does that work?
Well, typically on a fire like that, they'll wait for the FAA will dispatch. There's a local division here that will come out and do investigations, and the fire department will stay on location and make sure that the fire doesn't reignite. And a lot of times they'll keep some people on location until the aircraft is removed. And that's in conjunction with the FAA and to make sure everything's safe for a company to come out and move that aircraft. And there's going to be, it's a hazardous spill too, so there's going to be a hazardous spill cleanup, so a company's going to have to come out and clean that area up.
Yeah, we saw that they were putting booms out there to keep the runoff contained. All right, anything else you can add, Captain?
No, I'm just again the video that I'm seeing on TV right now. The fire department did an excellent job of not being on scene. Here at the airport division, we have special airport trucks that have 3,000 gallons of water, 400 gallons of foam for this, and then for them to do that with a supply line going through a dirt road, I'm very proud of what they did.
And how many agencies are out there? How many firefighters?
I really don't know. I heard it was Waller. Fire department responded. I don't know if they called out mutual aid, so I really don't know how many units were actually dispatched to the call.
Okay. Well, it's a massive undertaking for the firefighters and obviously for the investigators as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Captain. Captain Ronald Krosleski with Houston Fire Department. Thank you so much. Now, when we took the wide shot, it looked to me, you could see the tire marks on the runway and then through the field. Did this plane slide down? It looked like maybe at least 100 yards.
Yeah, it definitely looks like it came a good way.
It traveled over that road and then stopped there and caught fire.
And hard to see now from Air 11, but when we were getting kind of the vantage point of the airport runway in relation to where this plane is, you could see, the runway is just to the left of where that dirt road is.
Okay,
and
it looks like we have the DPS about to say something to us. Let's listen in.
We still have one more that we're waiting on. We appreciate y'all waiting as long as you have. I understand we just want to wrap on everything.
We're waiting a bit, but we'll be getting some word from state troopers about what happened and what course they take for the rest of the day.
Yeah, and I was just mentioning that you can see some tire marks here, which means that they kind of went through a couple trees first. They went through the fence, and it appears that it ran through a couple trees before it came to its resting spot right there. But again, the folks on board, the 21 people on board, were able to get off pretty quickly. 3 of them were crew members and one minor injury. And we've been showing you images of those flames, the fire that burst from that airplane, moments after this happened, and it's pretty incredible that they all got out.
It's a miracle that nobody was seriously injured, and nobody was seriously injured. Nobody was killed. One minor injury. But can you imagine being on that plane as it's going down the runway and it's just going across the fields, and then it must have been frightening.
And we don't want to speculate or assume anything, but I think, perhaps one of the reasons that this is not ending in fatalities is the plane never left the ground or didn't get much altitude, if anything. This obviously, and again, there was no monitoring air traffic control. There was no distress call that we've been able to find. There was no, I have mechanical failure, I have an engine out, I have something wrong, hydraulics went out. Whatever the myriad of mechanical things that can go wrong on a plane, certainly the pilot, from what we've been able to monitor, never relayed that to our air traffic control. So ostensibly he's picking up speed, he's going down the runway, about to take off, and as you've been saying, we see skid marks, we see it roll through either a fence line and or a tree line, coming to a rest there. And so if there is a silver lining, that is it.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of silver linings today. I mean, look at that wreckage. And then the weather was perfect, and with good conditions for the firefighters as well. If you're just joining us, there's been this. Can you still call it a plane crash if it never left the ground? We don't know if it left the ground.
And it didn't necessarily plan crash into anything.
Yeah, well,
so
it crashed into a fence and then caught fire.
Yeah.
It did crash into a fence and caught fire, and everybody on board safely exited the plane.
And it looks like the fire is out to, right now, they're sort of in cleanup mode, right? So putting out those booms, trying to control the runoff from having to put out those flames. This was not a small aircraft. You hear about these plane crashes and incidents with smaller planes that take off from these smaller airports, but this was a sizable aircraft. It's an MD-87, and from what we've seen so far, it's designed to hold up to 130 passengers, and so it's a fixed-wing, multi-engine plane. Luckily, not that many people on board, just 21 people on board, but all of them made it off safely. Only one minor injury reported. We still don't know who was on board the plane. We don't know where that plane was headed. And it all seemed to happen so fast because, as our investigative reporter Jeremy Rogalski was saying, there was no distress call. There seemed to be some conversation between air traffic control and the pilot, and everything seemed good to go. And then all of a sudden, just seconds later, there seemed to be a call out from air traffic control telling other aircraft there, hey, stay where you are, hold your position, we've got a situation. So everything seemed to happen within a matter of seconds. And again, this plane was cleared for takeoff just before 10 a.m. and then this happened just after. So all of this happening so quickly.
And again, a miracle that nobody was seriously hurt. Only one minor injury, 21 people aboard, 18 passengers, and 3 crew members. And then we'll be hearing from the DPS shortly.
And as we are approaching the 12 o'clock hour, we have been following breaking news for quite a while now. If you're just joining us, this was a plane crash that has happened in Waller County near the Houston Executive Airport. This is specifically in the Brookshire area. And what you're seeing is what's left of an MD-87 aircraft. It's just the tail there because we are looking at this plane crash that happened just after 10 o'clock. The Texas Department of Public Safety says there were 21 people on board. No one was seriously hurt. Now, we want to give you a better idea, of where all of this has happened. FM 2855, this is just north of Morton Road. And again, this is Houston Executive Airport. This is a private airport that is close by.
Yeah, and you are watching KHOU 11 News at noon, a live look from our photojournalist on the ground there. Let's listen to the DPS now.
Information officer. Of course, as you can see behind me, I have a huge support system behind me. Of course, with this county sheriff, emergency management entities, the fire chief, and a wealth of others. Today, I would like to start off by saying this is a good day. This is actually a day of celebration for a lot of people. So let me explain. Today, the Texas Department of Public Safety, the Waller County Sheriff's Office, and Waller Harris ESD 20 was called out to a scene of a plane crash right here in Waller County at FM 2855 and Morton. Once we arrived on scene, of course, we observed the plane in its state engulfed, and we were advised that, of course, all individuals on board the plane, all 18 passengers and 13 crew members survived. At this time, we're getting reports that 2 individuals were transported to the hospital for their injuries, and this plane was actually attempted to take off, but in a rolling state right here at the Houston Executive Airport here in Waller County, and never was able to take flight. The actual airplane rolled down the runway, struck an actual fence, and from there became disabled. Luckily, and we're thankful that all of the passengers and crew members were able to extract themselves, and that's when the first responders came in to go to work to extinguish the fire. So again, today is a good day for all, not only for the passengers and crew, but for this community and first responders. We do know that the plane was headed to Boston, leaving this airport, headed to Boston, and that's the information that we have at this time. We're not sure really why it caught on fire. Not sure if it was because it hit the structure, but we are waiting on the FAA, and they're going to be able to give us more information on the particulars of the actual crash. I would like to bring in our emergency management officials so they can speak onto the extinguishing of the fire. Boston. Possibly, I'm not sure. 18 passengers aboard, 3 crew members, to include 2 pilots and, of course, one attendee. The youngest child that we reported is 10 years old.
Can you walk us through how the passengers were able to extract themselves out of the plane?
We don't know that at this time, but of course, again, however they extracted themselves, they're off, and no one's deceased. And man, that is an awesome feeling right now for us as first responders.
Again, Sergeant Woodward, thank you for you and your team for being here today in Waller County. What I want to do as the Waller County Emergency Management Coordinator, I want to thank all the responding agencies that came to our aid. Waller County is a very rural community, but we have a lot of partners that surround us. As you can see, we have Harris County, we have Fort Bend County. We have a number of fire departments in the area who have assisted us. Again, it's a blessing today that all passengers were out of the plane, and just very minor injuries that was stated before, just lower back pain and some respiratory issues. So again, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Tim Gibson. He's the chief of the responding fire department that's handling this incident.
I'm Tim Gibson, Director of Waller Harris Emergency Services District 200. We're the provider out here for fire and EMS services across all of Waller County and part of Harris County. We have multiple service providers out here today. We actually did have multiple of our crew members in our fire departments that were responding that are also aircraft rescue firefighters and certified. They were able to get on scene, make a good assessment quickly. We did find that all passengers had self-extricated. We assisted them from the field where the plane ended up on the north side of Morton Road from the airport, and we were able to quickly get some of our off-road brush units out to the field and get the fire extinguished after substantial effort.
Do we know how far the plane traveled?
It was very difficult. It was fully involved, and we had to employ a lot of foam, and it took a lot of apparatus and a lot of joint efforts from our mutual aid partners as well as our own trucks and equipment.
Can you describe how they got off the plane and what their reaction?
They were stunned. They were very, very stunned, but they did all self-extricate. We can't tell you how they did that or in what method. And the plane was fully involved when we arrived.
And just describe the area where the plane came to land. For those passengers getting out, is it easy to walk around?
So there is a gravel driveway that goes out into that pasture, but it is very dense brush and pasture area out there where the plane ended up and came to rest.
Give us an idea of how surprising it is, how nobody here was killed, only minor injuries. Is that what y'all expected when you arrived here?
You know, ma'am, anytime you have a plane that doesn't make a landing on the runway like it should, we're always expecting the worst but hoping for the best, and today we absolutely positively got the best outcome we could hope for in this incident.
So was the plane in one piece when it landed?
I couldn't tell you that right now, ma'am. No, ma'am.
When it broke apart?
I couldn't tell you that right now either.
But sir, it never took off, right?
It was attempting a takeoff.
But did it go up?
Yeah, I do not believe so.
Did not. No, ma'am.
Has the pilot explained what happened or what caused them not to take off?
That's going to be coordinated between DPS, and I'll let them answer that.
Thank you so
Yes,
much.
sir.
Right now, again, we're waiting on the FAA, and they're going to look at the particulars of that. Again, what I can tell you is the plane traveled approximately 500 feet on the runway, and then that's when the actual incident ensued. So once the FAA arrives on scene, they'll be able to kind of tie this up and give us more particulars with their investigation. But at this time, that's all that we have. Again, I think we can all agree, we can celebrate on today that no one was killed in this horrific incident.
The two people that were transported, can you describe their injuries as to why they were transported to the
No, sir, I don't have any details on the injuries.
So where are the passengers now?
Anybody?
Are they still by the plane? Where are they?
Okay, all back at the airport. All back at the airport, safe and sound. Thank you, guys.
Do you have a Spanish speaker for us?
I do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hola, me llamo Trooper Miguel Tejeda, soy del Departamento Público de Estado de Texas, policía estatal, está la policía de condado y luego los bomberos del condado y de Jerez. Pero en este día, a las 10:01 de la mañana, hubo el accidente con el avión. Trató de subir en el aire, pero no pudo. Y las llantas se mantuvo en el runway y hasta que hizo contacto en el pastor. Y luego parece que un incendio, un fuego, y antes que se puso muy grave, los pasajeros pudieron abrir la puerta y salir de una manera. Y salieron y todos están bien. Eran 21 total. Y de ahí ellos se alejaron del avión y el avión pues se consumió en el fuego. Y eso es lo único que sabemos en este punto. Ahora, ¿qué causó el accidente? No sabemos. desierto, pero sí sabemos que nunca alcanzó a llegar al aire.
¿Cuál es el sentimiento entre ustedes, los rescatistas y oficiales, de que no haya habido fatalidades?
Pues como dijo el otro señor, nosotros siempre creemos que cuando nos dan la llamada, nosotros pensamos que vamos a ver lo más peor, pero en este día, gracias a Dios que no todos están bien. No hubo ninguna fatalidades.
¿Cómo salieron los pasajeros? ¿Cómo pudieron salir del avión?
No hablé con todos, pero hablé con uno y uno dijo que abrieron la puerta y se tiraron. No sé de qué 15 pies, 10 pies, no sé la altura, pero se tiraron, se salieron del avión rápido.
El avión se termina la pista y cruzó Morton Road hacia el otro campo.
Exactamente, sí. Hay como 500 pies en el Pastor, el lado del aeropuerto. Luego cruzó la calle y hay como otros 500 pies después, aproximadamente. Pero nunca alcanzó aire.
¿Qué parte del avión se consumió más? ¿El fuselaje, las alas o está totalmente destruido?
Pues lo que vi yo, solo los dos motores, lo que quedaron atrás. Digamos, los primeros dos, el fusilaje y todo donde están sentados los pasajeros, todo eso se quemó.
¿Dónde están ahora los pasajeros y si alguien fue llevado al hospital?
Pues de los 21, 2 se fueron al hospital por heridas menores y ¿cómo se dice? El smoke, el humo. Pero los otros están en el aeropuerto.
¿Qué tan difícil fue tener acceso al avión donde quedó para los rescatistas?
Había, de buena suerte, había una calle de que usan los que son dueños de la propiedad. Hay una calle ahí así como de tierra y piedra, así que directamente al avión.
¿Qué continúa ahora? ¿Qué procede ahora?
Ahora solo estamos esperando para el FAA, que lleguen aquí las autoridades federales, y de ahí ellos van a seguir la investigación.
¿Ya hay alguien viendo cómo fue el accidente?
Eso lo harían ellos.
¿Y también entrevistar a los pilotos?
Exactamente.
Entonces, ¿a qué hora se podría abrir el camino y cuánto tiempo duraría esta investigación?
Eso sí no te puedo decir. Yo he ido a unos menores y son 4 o 5 horas. Este es un poco más grande que es gran investigación, puede que sea un poco más. Pero,
¿es un avión privado de una compañía? ¿Quiénes son los dueños del avión?
No sé quién son los dueños, pero yo sé que el avión sí normalmente de aquí opera, pero creo que es privado, el avión privado.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate y'all.
All right. Gracias.
Can anyone confirm you're going to the ball game?
We don't know. We don't know. We just know manifest.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's not our show. All right, thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Quick question. Is there a way to give someone permission, like a pool camera, to be able to get access, like be escorted in, and then we can share the footage with everyone?
Yeah, they still shut down.
Is there a way to be like at a safe distance?
It's still on.
Okay, we've been listening to officials there, the DPS and Waller County as well, saying it's a day of celebration because no one was seriously hurt and no one was killed. But we have confirmed through the wife of the plane's owner the passengers were on their way to Boston to watch Game 4 tonight, Astros and Red Sox. We also learned that 2 people were taken to the hospital. We don't know the extent of the injuries, but at one point, one of the officials did say that there were lower back pain and respiratory issues.
And as we've been hearing the DPS troopers saying, this was a good day because, again, as Ron said, everyone on board made it off safely. Only 2 minor injuries. Those folks were taken to the hospital. The youngest passenger on the plane was a 10-year-old child. But again, all passengers and crew are back on the ground. They are safe, and apparently they're still at the airport right now.
Yeah,
so.
and the officials said that they were stunned.
Mm-hmm.
But here's a plane crash where the plane never left the ground.
And that was the whole thing. The plane never left the ground. It rolled off the runway, through a fence, became disabled. A lot of dense brush, a lot of trees in that area. So when we saw those flames erupt from the plane, pretty nerve-wracking to watch that. But firefighters were able to contain it and control it. Now, Jeremy Rogalski with our investigative team was here, and you have a little bit more about the conversation between air traffic controllers and the pilot just before all of this happened.
We do, and we'll get to that in a moment, but our Janelle Bluda spoke to the wife of the aircraft owner and confirms that he is identified as James Allen Kent, the owner of this McDonnell Douglas DC-9 MD-87. Again, 21 people on board. The plane holds many more. It has a capacity for over 100 passengers, as we were talking about, but that crew headed for Boston to watch the Astros game later on this evening from Executive Airport in the Waller County area. And so very interesting, as we mentioned, that the plane never took off. And that, as we listened, Reka and Ron, to air traffic control, makes a lot of sense, because, and we have a timeline here, and hopefully we can pull that up, the tower at Executive Airport cleared this aircraft for departure just before 10 o'clock, 9:58, 27 seconds actually. And the rest of the transmissions were about a half minute later. The tower actually told the pilot to make sure that you get above 1,200 feet, because there was some helicopter traffic in the area, and wanted to make sure that he cleared that traffic. And the pilot just a few seconds later said that should be no problem. I'll keep a lookout for that. And we don't hear anything else. We hear no distress call. We hear no mayday call that we've so accustomed to. Nothing of that nature. And when you look at the scene and then you hear from DPS, that's what makes sense. It traveled about 500 feet. You see the skid marks off the end of the runway, through that fence line, through that row of trees, coming to rest and bursting into flames. And again, it's fortunate, and certainly in many ways, that it did not gain altitude. It did not take flight. And I think the storyline of the day, it can't be repeated enough. This was a good day, all things considered.
Yes, the DPS saying it's a day of celebration. They have to thank their lucky stars that this wasn't worse. And they talked about how the passengers were reacting, and they said that they were stunned, obviously. Very stunned. It would have been frightening going down 500 feet and then maybe 100 yards down that field.
And I thought it was very interesting that in police speak, he said they all self-extricated. So plain English, they got out on their own.
Yeah.
We don't know how they got on their own, but the fact that they did not sustain injuries severe enough to require somebody pulling them out or first responders to get them out. Of course, we do have 2 hospitalizations. We don't know the status of them. Hopefully everything's fine. But those 18 passengers and those 3 crew members were able to get out on their own.
Right, and we should add that they were sent to the hospital. We don't know that they're still hospitalized or anything like that, but they were sent perhaps just as a precaution. We don't know. But they did say that there were some issues with lower back pain and respiratory issues, as you can imagine, with the smoke and everything.
And it sounds like we are hearing from one of the witnesses. Let's listen in.
I didn't really see much of the plane go down, but I did see the boom and I felt the explosion. So then we just came out here and started helping everybody, conduct traffic, make sure all the emergency people got in and out and everybody was good.
And to her point, this is a witness who, as she said, she heard the explosion. This was the best possible outcome given what we've been seeing the last hour or so with those flames erupting and everyone getting off of that plane so quickly. So obviously there's a lot of cleanup to be done. This is video and images from earlier today from Air 11. You see firefighters fighting those flames with water and of course foam to keep everything under control, and also having to maintain and control the runoff and contain the runoff from all of this, because there's a lot of jet fuel and other chemicals that's in there. But again, when they finish the cleanup, now the flames are out, they're going to finish the cleanup, and of course the investigation has started. They're looking into, what exactly happened and what caused this plane to roll through that fence right off the runway. But the FAA and the NTSB will pick it up from there.
And what she said was interesting too, because we said the plane caught fire. Well, she said she heard an explosion. So that's a lot different. It's a different animal, obviously, when something explodes as opposed to something just catching fire. So even more frightening. Even more frightening.
When you think about all those people on board, especially the youngest one being a 10-year-old child, I can't imagine how scary this must have all been. We understand, though, that all of the folks who are on the plane are still at the airport. They're inside the airport, possibly going to be interviewed. Folks will be talking to them. But 2 people were taken to the hospital. We don't know if they're still in the hospital. We don't know the exact injuries that they suffered. But again, we've been hearing minor injuries. Nothing incredibly serious. And that's very good news considering everything we saw transpire this morning.
Absolutely. As the DPS was saying, it's a day of celebration. Let's go back to our reporter on the ground there, David Gonzalez. Can you give us any kind of update, David?
Hey, yeah, talking to DPS, we just finished that press conference, and they started off the press conference by saying this is a good day, and this is obviously a good day because they are very happy to report that there were no injuries, serious injuries, and there were no fatalities. Right now, here's a live look. Excuse the traffic going by, but we are getting a better picture off into the distance of what remains of this aircraft, which is pretty much nothing, they say. Everything from the tail moving forward has been destroyed, according to DPS out here, and they say that it's a miracle that no one was killed in this plane crash. According to DPS, they say that the plane traveled about 500 feet on the ground, rolling through a fence and then going another 500 feet before it finally came to a stop here in this field right next to the airport. According to DPS, they say that everyone on board was able to get out on their own, which is a good sign. Minor injuries. 2 people were transported to the hospital. When I asked them what specifically those injuries were, they could not provide that information, but they did say that people were suffering from lower back pain, also from respiratory issues. If you've seen the footage from when this plane first crashed, there was black plumes of smoke coming from the aircraft. They say that this area is a heavily brushed area, so those passengers had to get out and of course make their way as far as possible from that plane crash. So we do not know if they received any kind of cuts from the brush, stuff like that, but of course they are being treated here at the scene as well as at the hospital, those 2 people that were transported. We do know that everyone is back at the Houston Executive Airport, and that's where they are right now, and we're assuming from there they could either go home, or if they need further assistance they could go to the hospital as well. But according to DPS, everyone is lucky to be alive. This could have been a lot worse, and we would be reporting on a major tragedy out here outside in Waller County, outside of the Houston Executive Airport. Luckily, everyone was able to make it out safely, and right now deputies out here say that right now it's just making sure that the scene is contained.
Absolutely. David Gonzalez reporting live from the ground. Thank you so much. We're going to go now to Cheetah Craft. You know, we've been talking about Cheetah, how the flight conditions were just wonderful today. We've got, you know, great visibility, no high winds here, but the plane never made it off the ground, and that weather actually proved to be very advantageous for firefighters putting out those flames.
Rika, you're right. Anybody who's a pilot or was going to take a flight today, ideal day to take off because it's just beautiful out there. We did have some cloud cover early, but that broke apart so quickly. So look, really the impacts here, we're talking weather conditions impacting the smoke and where that smoke is traveling. So that was really good news with the fire crews on ground level as far as how calm our winds are. So I'm going to give you a little perspective with this map here. I'm going to take this off the actual location and broaden out the scope so you can see, even if you're in the surrounding areas. We're talking about on the cusp between Harris County and Waller County. We have an easterly wind over this location. So those easterly winds are going to take any smoke and really have that travel due west. So an east to west wind. We've tried to see some of these winds shift more out of the southeast, but I think at this point most of these winds are going to probably stay and keep that smoke in Waller County. They're just not, they're all less than 10 miles per hour. So originally with some of the smoke, I was a little concerned with potential air quality issues across the area. I think because we have those clear skies, smoke is going to be able to lift out of the atmosphere. Winds are calm, so it'll give some natural mixing. We'll watch to see if any of the levels change at all. But so far, we've actually seen everything kind of mix out pretty easily. At the lower levels of the atmosphere, we don't have cloud cover to talk about. Visibilities were not a concern. So really current conditions right over this area. We have a calm easterly wind that is moving some of that smoke due west, and we're also tracking mainly clear skies. I've been looking at our satellite picture here, and some of the surrounding areas we do have some cloud cover, so especially closer to the coastline. I'll zoom out now where you see some of the deeper grays here right along the coastal areas or even portions of Wharton County. Those are clouds, so some of that would have helped to trap some of that smoke, but not the issue or the concern from Harris County into Waller County where this plane is. Basically, we have clear skies and calm winds, guys, and air quality so far, not much of a concern, but we'll continue to monitor. All right. Thank you so much, Cheetah Craft, for that update on the weather conditions out there. And Jeremy Rogowski, one of our investigative reporters, has been kind of digging deeper into what happened this morning and the owner of the plane.
Not only the owner of the plane, but the timeline of how this all went down, Ron. And so let's take a look. This is traffic control at 9:59. This is after he's cleared for takeoff. That they clear him for takeoff at 9:58 this morning, and everything's good to go. The only other transmissions, as we scroll through the timeline here, are the tower telling the pilot, "Hey, make sure you're above 1,200 feet," because apparently there was some helicopter traffic in the area. The pilot responds just a few seconds later saying that should be no problem. I'll keep a lookout for it. And then we don't hear anything until about 3 minutes later, when the tower tells all aircraft in the area to hold your position. They're going to ask for a runway inspection, and then they suspend all runways. So the point being is there was no indication that anything was wrong. Cleared for takeoff. Make sure you keep an eye out for the helicopter traffic in the area, and according to the radio transmissions back and forth, everything was good to go. But then, of course, we hear DPS saying it only made it about 500 feet on the ground and never actually took flight, never gained altitude.
Yeah, in a lot of ways that could probably save lives in some ways, the fact that it never left the ground. So that's really good to know. We're going to go live to Janelle Bluda, who is live outside Houston Executive Airport in Waller County. And Janelle, it appears that you spoke with the wife of the owner of that plane. What did she tell you?
Yeah, Reika, well, let me give you just a brief setting of where I'm at right now. We are just right outside the Houston Executive Airport. Now, that plane crash happened on the other side of these buildings. It's been a very calm scene out here. A few people leaving and some people going inside. Not a lot. We haven't had a chance yet to talk to anyone, but I did, like you said, talk to the wife of the owner of that plane. I was able to talk to her by phone. She confirmed to me that her husband was on the plane. He is the owner, and that they were headed to the Astros game. Luckily, just like everyone else here, just very happy everyone was okay. But like I said, out here, a very calm, quiet scene as people come and go, and this is where we were told that the passengers were taken after that plane did crash, guys.
Well, you can see how they are, obviously thanking their blessings. Thank you so much, Janelle Bluda, down there at the airport. But as we heard earlier, they were stunned about what happened, and I'm sure frightened. Come on, a frightening experience for all those passengers today.
Absolutely. With the youngest passenger on board, just a 10-year-old boy, you can imagine after they crashed through that fence in the plane that they weren't quite sure what was going on. So thankfully, they were able to exit that plane immediately. Janelle, have you seen anyone else come out from the airport? We know that 2 people were taken to the hospital, and we don't know if they were transported by ambulance or someone drove them to the hospital. Again, no serious injuries or fatalities, just minor injuries. Have you seen any other emergency vehicles there since you've been there?
We did just see a couple firefighters leave, Reika, but we just got here a few minutes ago. We wanted to jump on and tell you guys what we learned latest. I am going to try to talk to some people as they come in and out. It looks like we might be allowed on scene here to go up to the building, so maybe we can have a chance then to talk to a few people and see if we can find some of those passengers, but we will keep you updated on that, Reika.
All right, thank you so much, Janelle Bluda, live at the airport down there. Let's recap for everybody, if you're just joining us, about this incident involving a plane out at this airport in Brookshire, Katy area. We understand it was an M87. It was heading to Boston. The passengers wanted to go to Game 4 tonight in Boston to watch the Astros and Red Sox. DPS says it's a day of celebration because there were 18 passengers, 3 crew members, and nobody was seriously hurt. Nobody was killed. 2 people were sent to the hospital. But this plane never left the ground. It rolled, hit a fence, and caught fire. 2 pilots on board. There was a 10-year-old child on board, but again, this could have been a lot worse, Reika.
Very much so. A lot of people in Waller County today thanking their lucky stars that they made it out of this situation alive. Firefighters able to gain control of that fire and those flames on the plane. So again, as DPS troopers said, this is a good day. Of course, we'll have more